How's it going, guys? Vaibhav here and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I want to talk about Nokia. So as of late, they've been in the news for their mid to budget range smartphones, whether that's the Nokia 1.3, the 5.3, or their new Express Music smartphone, but they haven't really announced a flagship per se. They did announce the Nokia 8.3 5G, which was their first ever smartphone to embark on the 5G journey, but nothing flagship level. Now, over the last couple of years, we've been hearing a lot about the next Nokia 9 Pureview. Now, I had a chance to use the Nokia 9 Pureview, the original one with the penta-camera setup, 12 megapixels, and on paper it sounded absolutely great. I mean, this thing was designed well too. It had no sort of bulge to the camera, so all of that was great. But it didn't perform as expected. It did have some enhancements, and some pictures it took were absolutely phenomenal, but nothing to really take advantage of that many camera sensors. I was wondering why they didn't have sort of a video optimized mode where it takes advantage of all those sensors and just more to do with things that people want to use on a regular basis. And since then, they've sort of delayed the 9.2 Pureview, and now we're starting to hear about the 9.3 Pureview, and that's why I wanted to make this video. Now, if you go ahead and look at Twitter, this website or this sort of page called Nokia Anew is basically responsible for all Nokia leaks as of late. Now, if you scroll down all the way to around the time of April 13th, they've been discussing the new Nokia 9.3, actually a bit earlier than that. So the Nokia 9 that was supposed to be launched this year, sort of towards the mid of this year, and probably MWC time has been delayed to late Q4, which is expected considering the circumstances we're going through. But then we've started to see more and more tweets coming from this account. So the first tweet that came was them testing between a 64 megapixel sensor from Sony and a 108 megapixel Samsung sensor. Both of these models on both sensors show impressive results according to the leakster, and the final version of the phone is almost ready, and this is being touted as one of the design choices for the smartphone. Now, I think the penta-camera setup nowadays looks much better than it did when it came out 1 or 2 years ago, because it's now much more of a commonplace. I think more flagships are having quad camera setups, but this circular style is something unique, and I think they're going to try and make the notch or sort of the bulge of the camera as small as possible, and probably try and imitate this one with no camera bump at all. If you go ahead and look at the bottom, Juho Sarvikas is basically the Nokia head, and we're going to go into a tweet by him just a bit later, but basically he wanted to leave only the 108 megapixel sensor and abandon the system of simultaneous operation of several sensors, but that would just make an uninteresting product. So I think they're going to be using the sensors simultaneously in some way or the other. If we go up to another leak, there's apparently 10 different prototypes of the Nokia 9.3 Pureview, and I don't think that's a very odd statement. I think every smartphone manufacturer has more than 5 to 6 prototypes of their smartphone before they decide on one final product. So HMD has also tested 24 megapixels, 20 megapixel, and 48 megapixel sensors. Now, if you remember the previous Pureview, it didn't have different megapixel count sensors. I think all of their megapixel counts were 12, but this time around, maybe one of the sensors could have the 108, the other could have maybe the 64, and then the 24, 20, and 48 megapixel sensors all working simultaneously. So that would be something to look forward to, especially if they can sort of get the ultra wide angle camera at a high resolution. I think the highest resolution ultra wide angle camera we have right now is from the OnePlus 8 series. It's a 48 megapixel ultra wide angle camera. But if you go ahead and look at this tweet, while the camera setup will have optical image stabilization, it won't have optical image stabilization on multiple cameras, and I think that's a big bummer for the smartphone, because when I talked to Nokia about this phone, I did ask them if multiple cameras would be able to record video, record stable video, and the answer was no. And I think with the Nokia 9.3 Pureview, the answer will still be no. So that's a bummer. I don't know if this means the cameras won't work simultaneously or only one camera will be able to produce stable footage, but nonetheless I would have liked to see more than one camera have optical image stabilization, because that's sort of become a staple for even flagship smartphones from Samsung, the Apple iPhone 11 series, etc, etc. But one key thing to look forward to is that it will have a 120Hz display. Now the display on the Pureview 9 wasn't the most immersive per se. It did have bezels on the top and bottom, so it wasn't really immersive, but the 120Hz display that we're talking about from Nokia might have sort of a punch hole style notch. It might get rid of the selfie camera altogether and maybe have a rear screen. The possibilities are really endless, and as far as speculation goes, we can think of anything, but we've got a long time before we see the Nokia 9.3 Pureview, so we're gonna see a lot of leaks throughout. Now, the last tweet that they pointed out was on April the 15th, and that's when they were talking about the different colors. Now, the company is currently deciding on the colors for the flagship, and Huo wants either blue or black. The developers are insisting on using green and white colors. So they had this sort of poll running, which is still running, so I haven't voted on it, but these are basically the colors that they were deciding on. Now, if you go to Hugo Serviga's tweet here, I don't know what's going on here as usual. I'm more of a polar night and something new bold like we have with copper for lighter color. That's what he's saying. So I'm guessing with the tweets and sort of if you add the two together, I think the colors on the Nokia 9.3 Pureview are going to be unique, and that's something we should look forward to. As far as other specifications go, I'm pretty much expecting high-end specifications. So the Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 series, I don't know if it'll have the 865 Plus, because usually around the end of the year we see the Plus variant from Qualcomm. It might not have it to save costs. We could also see maybe a 6 to a 6.5 inch display, 120Hz as we've seen already. I don't think Nokia is jumping the gun with a QHD Plus panel, so I think they'll stick to full HD Plus, 12GB of RAM or maybe 8GB of RAM. Optimization to sort of improve the camera performance in general, and I think it's gonna have a clean Android experience, so Android One running on the Nokia 9.3 Pureview. So I think that rounds up everything we've seen about the Nokia 9.3 Pureview so far. I mean, we can expect them to have nice colors, we can expect it to have high-end specifications and a very, very good camera. I don't think Nokia wants to screw this up twice in a row, so I'm pretty sure they're working hard to make sure that the Nokia 9.3 Pureview has one of the best cameras on a smartphone out there. But let me know what you guys think about the Nokia 9.3 Pureview. Do you think it has a space in the currently very, very oversaturated market that we're in? Do you think Nokia is going to do well with its camera focused smartphone series, or should they just focus on budget to mid-end smartphones and scrap the flagship series altogether? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below, and that's about it. Thanks for watching. This was Vaibhav, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.